We begin with the South Florida Congressman finishing his first term and headed to November with no official opponent. This week, Congressman Carlos Gimenez and his South Florida colleagues held an event to unveil a bill to combat communism.
And Congressman Gimenez is a sponsor of that bill. He joins us now live by way of Zoom. Congressman, good morning. Great to have you on the show. How are you?
Great to be here. By the way, congratulations, Glenna, on your Emmy.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman, let me begin with a strictly political question. As Glenna said at the outset, you are running for re-election, and no Democrat has announced that he or she is going to run against you in November. Now, is that because of the sterling job you're doing, or because the Democrats have a weak bench, or because President Biden's approval ratings are in the 30s and the prospects for Democrats is just pretty dismal? What's going on there?
I think you answered it, all three. So I think I'm doing a good job. When I'm in the stores and people come up to me and say you're doing a great job, and I'm very humbled by that. I'm humbled by the fact that I represent Florida's 26th congressional district. It's a great honor to be a congressperson. I think the Democrats do have a very weak bench down here in South Florida in particular, and Florida in general. And also, President Biden's approval ratings are in the tank. And then everything that he touches, everything that the Democrats, look, everything I said the Democrats were going to do, they're doing. And everything that they're doing is not working. It's actually hurting America. And so the American people have woken up to the fact that they have an inept president, an incompetent administration, that everything they touch basically it doesn't turn to gold. Let's put it that way. Okay.
Yeah. So, well, Congressman, let me just jump in and say, since no Democrat is present, that the growth rate of the economy over the last year, we just found out on Friday, was 5.8%. Now, that's a record. Haven't had that in a couple of decades. So,
sure.
and unemployment is 3.9%. Some things are going well, aren't they?
Yeah, except that the unemployment is 3.9%, but there are 10 million jobs opening, which means that there are a lot of Americans not even looking for a job, which presses down that unemployment rate. Inflation is at a 40-year high. Gas prices are over 100% higher than when they took over. Joe Biden closed our pipeline, the XL pipeline, and then allowed Putin to go and open his pipeline. Putin is now threatening the Ukraine. Look, things just aren't going well, and people know it. The border is it's not a mess. It is a disaster. Over 2 million encounters that we've had, in the last year. And those are the encounters, the people we actually know that are crossing the border. They're flouting the law. People are being sent all over this country. No vaccines, no tests to determine if they have COVID or not. And yet you and I, according to Biden, we have to wear masks and we have to have a vaccine, passport to go into a restaurant. But if you cross the southern border, that's not the case. Look, the American people have seen what's going on. It's a disaster, unmitigated disaster. And the growth rate is due to the fact that we had such a slowdown in the economy due to COVID-19. It's bound to rebound. And thank God that we're rebounding now, but not at the way it should be.
So, Congressman, economy, inflation, to your point, these are on top of everybody's minds right now. I want to take you to sort of your news of the week, because you were here unveiling a bill, and it wasn't about the economy and it wasn't about inflation. It was about combating communism. So the bill that you had announced with your South Florida colleagues was a bill that will create it's just kind of a one-liner. It'll create a State Department envoy especially to combat communism. Why is that needed now? What does that do that the State Department and USAID and the administration doesn't do right now?
It focuses the administration, it focuses the State Department has one individual focused in on what communism, socialism, authoritarianism regimes are doing around the world to try to help the people, freedom-loving people of the world to throw the yoke off of them in places like Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and other places. And also, it puts an emphasis, hopefully, on our own hemisphere. There are things happening in our hemisphere which are rather troubling to me. We have leading in the polls in Colombia, a very stable democracy for many, many years. Somebody who was a member of M19 guerrilla group, who we believe is a Marxist. And are they going to be following the Maduro blueprint because Maduro is pumping millions of dollars into that election, hopefully to find an ally, and then maybe, just maybe, change Colombia into Venezuela.
Yeah.
We need to be cognizant of what's happening around the world, but especially in our own hemisphere.
Of course,
and so this envoy is there to put that emphasis on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the question is, you remember, was it last month there was the Biden administration convened world leaders, talked about more than $400 million to especially address exactly those things that create that atmosphere, corruption and poverty, crime. So I guess the question is, what will a special envoy do that is not being done right now?
It puts an emphasis on it. It puts somebody specially focused on that, and also somebody that can have the ear of the president. Will this president actually listen to that envoy? I doubt it. Just like he didn't listen to his generals in Afghanistan. And so this is being put forward now. I don't think it's going to hit the floor because obviously we're in the minority. But next year, hopefully, when we're in the majority, it'll be put on the floor, debated, hopefully passed, and then passed by the Senate. Then we'll see what the president of the United States is going to do with that piece of legislation. Will he veto it or will he accept it? And then once he accepts it, if he accepts it, will he actually listen to the special envoy telling him about threats to democracy, especially in our hemisphere? And that's really what this is all about. This is not a cure-all. It's just a step in the right direction. Obviously, we need to do a lot more things in our own hemisphere and a lot more things to combat the threat of socialism and communism around the world and in our hemisphere, especially in our hemisphere. And by the way, that's not the only bill that I've introduced. I've introduced a whole bunch of other bills that have to deal with the economy or supply chain. And this is just one of the bills that I've introduced.
You have, and just for the record, we just do the topical news of the week. That's why we brought this one.
Right.
Michael.
Okay, no problem.
Congressman, let's talk about communism close to home in Cuba. Right now, I think the Diaz-Canel regime is conducting these show trials for nearly 800 men, women, and children who were arrested after the July 7th, 11th insurrection, the rebellion in the streets, which were largely peaceful. And what is the United States doing, or what can the United States do to react against this terrible act of repression?
Well, I think that, the United States can impose, harsher restrictions, harsher sanctions, on the Cuban regime. We certainly can do what we've been asking for, since July, restore, free access to internet for the Cuban people so that they can communicate amongst themselves and communicate to the rest of the world about what's actually happening in Cuba. They put in jail, one of the writers of that song that won two Grammys, Patria Vida. Actually, one of them is in jail right now simply for writing a song, asking for freedom. And that's all the people of Cuba asked for: freedom. They weren't asking for anything else, and they went to the street, spontaneous demonstrations. And then what do you get? No violence, nothing. It's just asking for freedom. This is what you get. You get put in jail and put on trial. And so, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about totalitarian regimes, and then how they oppress the people and how they're oppressing the people of this hemisphere. The United States needs to be the leader. We need to be that beacon of hope. We need to take steps to assure that at least in this hemisphere. Okay, this is the hemisphere of democracy. Unfortunately, it may be going the other way with some of the elections. And by the way, these totalitarian regimes, they're using democracy against democracy. Look what happened in Venezuela. Chavez was elected democratically, and yet he went in and changed the Constitution, also changed the makeup of the Supreme Court, their Supreme Court, where they got 45,000 verdicts in favor of the government. And that's what they're doing. This is the new playbook for communist and totalitarian regimes. They're using democracy against itself to create these regimes that then are self-perpetuating.
Well, we understand they are Potemkin democracies. They don't really exist in the way that we in Western Europe, Scandinavia, a lot of the world. Well, we need to take a break, Congressman. Sure. Stay with us. We'll be right back. On this chilly Sunday, we are speaking with U.S. Congressman Carlos Gimenez, who is joining us by Zoom. Congressman, the world right now is on the precipice of maybe the first major shooting war in decades as these Russian troops are surrounding all the borders of Ukraine. Experts say that once the ground is totally frozen, maybe in a week or two, when the Russian tanks and troops could move in more easily, that in fact Russia is going to invade Ukraine. What is your opinion of the job the Biden administration has been doing to try to halt that or to discourage Putin from doing that? And what would you like to see President Biden do?
Well, I mean, obviously, the first thing that I'd like to see him do is supply more lethality to the Ukrainians so that they can protect themselves against this onslaught if it comes. It's also could serve as a deterrent so that it doesn't come. First thing he did, though, I mean, back in when he took office, and then he killed our pipeline, and then he allowed Putin to build his pipeline. And so you could have used that as a weapon. You could have used energy as a chip, but he gave away that chip. He gave away that chip right off the bat without even starting to play. And that's the problem with President Biden. He's just wrong. He's wrong all the time. He doesn't understand, the dynamics of it. He is destroying our energy industry while allowing the Russian energy industry, which in turn funds the Russian military, to thrive. And so that's one of the things that I would use. I'd say I'd tell Putin, hey, go ahead. If you want to do that, we're going to help the Ukrainians defend themselves. But in the end, if you do, the sanctions are going to be severe. That pipeline, we're going to sanction it again, and we're going to start our own production, and we're going to drive your energy production into the ground. That's exactly what Reagan did back in the 80s when he ramped up our military spending, and he basically spent the Soviet Union into the ground. They couldn't keep up with us. They can't keep up with us on this either. But Biden has already given that up because he is heck bent on destroying our energy industry here in the United States, which, by the way, produces energy 20% cleaner than other places in the world. So we produce the cleanest energy, and yet we want to destroy ours and then ask OPEC to pump more because we need more gas in the United States. We were almost, if not totally, energy independent before President Biden came in, and now we're not. Well, thank you again, President Biden. President Biden again, just doesn't understand. He makes the wrong choices for the American people, actually putting us in danger because you're right. We are close to having an all-out shooting war in Europe, something which we haven't had in decades.
Congressman, I want to go back to something that you said before relative to Cuba and the political prisoners and the focus, at least in this country for 5 decades now, on the need for free and fair elections there, one of the components of what would be a free Cuba. I want to sort of launch from that into, in the House vote on the Voting Rights Act, you voted against the U.S. Voting Rights Act. Why? Why?
Because it's a farce. I mean, you've got elections need to be fair and verifiable, and those that are eligible to vote should vote. We have the freest elections in the world. We have early voting. We have absentee ballots. Day of voting with over 800 places where you can go. That Voting Rights Act is not really a Voting Rights Act. It would have opened the door for all kinds of shenanigans to happen. And so
like
I don't
what?
think
what kind of shenanigans?
Let's say you're putting ballot boxes all over the place and they're not being guarded by anybody, which is what happened in Georgia. Well, what's to stop somebody from going in and stealing all those ballot boxes in heavily Democrat area or heavily Republican area? How about counting votes after the election is over? All right, that's ridiculous. That way, hey, we need to find 30,000 votes here. Let's go find 30,000 votes somewhere. It's just asking for trouble. The way we hold elections here in Florida should be the model for the rest of the nation. But it's up to the state legislators to determine the means and methods of their elections in their states. That's what's in the Constitution. There should not be a federal takeover of election laws around the nation.
Yeah, well, in fact, Congressman, the Constitution clearly says that Congress has the supreme right to set the rules, regulations, and laws regarding elections, and I think what the Democrats say they want is some uniformity and also to make voting easier and not to put barriers in the way, especially of minority voters.
Well, like what barriers are there to people getting to voting? I mean, we have 14 days of early voting. You have 30 in Miami-Dade County. You have 33 different polling places. You can request an early an absentee ballot, which will be mailed to you a month before the election is over. You just need to get it in by 7 o'clock on election day. We count the votes as they come in. You get the results really quickly. And you know what? Nobody said a word about it. You know, the places that are most restrictive happen to be the blue states. All right, you know, the place where the president comes from. Okay, and so they don't have the same kind of rules as they even have in Georgia, for God's sakes. And so look. It's really, it says voting rights bill, but it's not. And what we need to have are equitable laws, fair laws that allow you to vote. There is no restrictions on voting here. I don't know of any place that they restrict anybody on voting. And you have, at least in this state, you have over a month to get your vote in. I think the whole argument is ridiculous.
Carlos Gimenez, Congressman from Miami, you know, we just never have enough time with you ever. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, and I enjoy the back and forth with you guys too, you know, so whenever you want me back, I'll be back.
Deal.
Congressman, thank you. And if you played golf, as I know you love to do, early Sunday mornings at the Biltmore, I guess you wore your gloves today.
Oh, I didn't play today. It was a little too cold for me, even for me. Today.
Even for you.
Even for me. So tomorrow, next Sunday, I'll probably be out there as long as it's not 35 degrees.
Okay.
No falling iguanas.
All right, Congressman, hit them long and straight. Thank you very much.